Hi, this is Megan Jacks, Creative Memories Independent Advisor, and I have another layout assembly video where I'm going to give you some design insights as I work through sketch number 3 from the November 2020 Creative Memories virtual crop. If you would like a copy of this sketch, head on over to the Creative Memories blog. You can search for November 2020 and find sketch number 3 for the virtual crop. So this sketch is a single page sketch. We can see there's 3 vertical images. I've got some bands of what appear to be cardstock or designer paper in there. You could use border, ribbons, whatever kind of things you want to give yourself that horizontal banding effect. I've also got a wider piece of paper or such here that has the ribbon cut. Those are kind of the unique features. The title also reflects the ribbon cut. They have a journal box and some embellishments. So I have some photos from when the snow first started falling for the February 2019 snowpocalypse here in Seattle. So I'm going to use this as kind of my front page of my snowpocalypse album. And so this worked out perfect for me. I'm going to do a slight change in how I have the photos arranged because I do have one horizontal image that I want to include. So I'll show you how I did that. So the first thing I needed to do was I started off with my background paper and I settled on I'm using the Frost collection. So this is my background paper. It is actually part of the foiled accent paper. Has this really pretty foil detail on the other side, but I'm going to use the non-foiled side in this layout. And for my bands, as you can see here, I need to have, I decided I was going to have mirror what I did at the top at the bottom. So I needed something at the top and I decided I wanted something dark. I wanted something darker here at the top. So I had some leftover darker blue frosty snow print from the promotional pack that was called Winter Frolic. On the other side is kind of the speckled blue and green, but I want this dark tonal blue. So I'm going to use that. I'm also going to use kind of a medium tone paper. So I've got this knit print from the Frost collection. And then I've also got the tonal light blue vine print from the Frost collection. And I'm going to work in the crimson. So these are the papers that I decided to work with here on this nice light background. I've gone ahead and I've made the cuts already. And I'll show you what those are. So here you can see, I went ahead and I decided that this top layer was, or this top band was probably about 1 inch tall, but I went ahead and cut it at 1.5 inches. That gives me a little bit more flexibility. The piece I was working with was already cut to 10 inches wide and that works fine. So I'm going to stick it at 1.5 by 10. For the next 2 prints that I'm using, the knit print and the vine, I went ahead and cut both of those at 2 inches because that's going to give me a little bit of a play. I can vary the width. So having that 2 inches in there is going to just be great. I didn't cut it down from 12 inches. I'll make that determination once I've actually got everything kind of placed. I went ahead and decided that this band was going to be my crimson cardstock. And I decided that it was about 3 inches. That's what I kind of eyeballed it at. And I decided I'm going to try to work in the Snowflake Border Maker cartridge. I thought that was fun. It gives me some nice additional detail without being too overwhelming. So that's how I'm going to get kind of started with this. So I've got my background paper. And I'll go ahead, set this off to the side here a little bit. And the first thing I need to do is actually, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do my ribbon cut on my crimson cardstock, because that's the one detail that I wanted to be able to show you some ways to do it efficiently using the trimmer mat. I'm going to be using the 0 center ruler. You wouldn't have to use a 0 center ruler. If you don't have it, you can use a regular ruler. I can tell you, when I'm doing something like this and I see something that I know I'm going to have to measure the middle of, if I can control how wide I'm going to make it, I'm going to use a measurement that I could easily determine what the middle is. So that was one of the reasons I chose 3, because it's super easy for me to know that halfway for the 3, middle of 3 is 1.5 inches. So that makes it super easy to make the ribbon cut. The first thing I'm going to do is I see that I am not the full 12 inches. I don't go point. The ends are not right to the edge. So I'm going to go ahead and cut off 1/2 inch on the end of my cardstock. So I'm going to come in here. 1/2 inch is that very first printed line. I'm going to go ahead and cut that off. That's all I'm going to need the trimmer for now. I will need it to cut my other pieces down. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my cardstock here, and I'm going to grab my 0 center ruler, and I need to determine how far from the end to the center point is. And I'm going to say, I'm probably going to go around 1 inch, I think. Go ahead and make that point 1 inch in. And part of that is, actually, I take it back. I'm not, because I'm looking at here, and I'm going to put my 0 center ruler on, and I'm lining it up at the inch mark. So I can see right here is where my center is. I can see what that angle looks like, and it's kind of steep compared to what they show over here. So I'm going to bring this down to 3/4 inch. I'm using my 3/4 inch on either side to line up my ruler. So now I know from here to here is 3/4 inch, and I can tell that my cardstock is off. If I want to use my mat to help me center it, that I can keep my 6, and I'm going 1.5 inches out from each side. So once again, I'm back here at 3/4 inch. I'm going to grab my pencil and I'm going to mark. So I've got my center line here. I'm going to turn it around. I'm going to do the other side. I'm centering it on my 6 inch mark. I'm coming out to 1.5 inches either side of 6 inches, lining up my ruler at 3/4 inch on either side, and marking at that center spot. So now what I can do here is I can use my ruler, and since I'm working with cardstock, I can say this is the back side of the cardstock. And I can just line it up from corner here, and I can go ahead and draw my angles. Now, normally, if I was not working with something so wide, I would probably just grab my scissors and make the cut. But this is pretty wide. So I'm going to give myself a line to guide that pencil, or to guide my scissors. I like my ribbon ends to be nice and even. So that is easy enough to do. And go ahead and make a nice steady cut. All the way up to the middle. And it releases. And repeat on the other side. I like my scissors for this type of thing. Then I don't necessarily risk overshooting the cut. Sometimes if I use a trimmer, I just overshoot it a little bit. In cardstock, it's a little bit more noticeable if you overshoot that mark. A lot more control with my scissors. So now I've got my ribbon end, my center band for my layout done. So that's easy enough. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use my trimmer mat so that I can have my vertical, or my lines here to help me actually assemble this. So the first piece I need to put down is my 10-inch piece. And then I'm going to layer in my vine, and I want it to be, I think I'm going to go roughly, I think a 1/4 of an inch bigger on either side. So I know this is 10 inches. So I'm going to trim this to 10.5, which means I need to take off 1.5 inches. So I'm going to use my trimmer. I'm going to come down here. I'm going to take off 1.5 inches. Double check that I like that. Yep, I do. So I'm going to go ahead and cut the other piece the same. Taking off 1.5 inches. So I'll have a 10.5 inch strip. And then for my next one, I want it to be just a little bit wider. I'm going to double check here though, because I want my ends of my banner to stick out beyond it. So I'm going to go ahead and trim it and 1/2 inch or 1/4 inch beyond each. And so that would give me to 11. So I'm going to take off 1 inch on each of these pieces. Now I'm going a little conservative because I can definitely shrink everything down a little bit if I need to. I can actually tell that the sketch itself has a little bit more space out here than I'm giving my sketch or my interpretation. So that's okay. I can always cut off more. It's just difficult to put it back on. So I'm just going to kind of dry fit. I'm just going to lay it out. See how I like my overall spacing. Now, one thing I have, and this is what I was kind of envisioning, is I was thinking I was going to come in here and lay the border maker strip in here. So I want to make sure, give myself some space there. The other thing I need to keep an eye on is I need to keep an eye on my center of my page, because this is where I'm actually going to line up my endpoints here. So I can see that this band is starting to creep in here. So I think what I'm going to end up having to do is probably go ahead and slice off, oh, maybe even 1 inch off of each one. Now I'm going to give you a little preview here. I have a fun title that I've already placed the stickers on. And I'm going to show you the photos that I'm going to be using. And the reason I'm going to put my photos on here now is it's going to let me see how much can I bring this in. So I just have 2 photos. My little guy sticking his tongue out there being kind of silly about that. And then I have this other photo, which I was going to place here at the bottom. I'm not going to journal here. I plan to do a big, probably almost a full page of journaling of the insanity that was all that snow. So I'm not as concerned for this page having a journal piece. What I'm checking here for is I'm checking for this width to see if I can come in a little bit. And I think I can. I think I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull 1 inch off of each one of these strips. I'm going to leave crimson the same by pulling 1 inch off of my designer paper strips. So I'll go ahead and grab that. So this is where one of those things, it was actually works in my favor to not cut too much paper off. Give myself that flexibility. just keep track of which papers you've cut that inch off of. This is the one thing where sometimes I think, oh man, it would be so nice if we had the explicit instructions, especially if you're wanting to follow the sketch fairly faithfully. If we had those measurements, it'd be so nice. But it's okay that we don't. We'll make it work. So here I've got this, and I'm going to start layering it on again. So now what I like to see is I've cleared my insets. That was really important. I've got none of this blue paper sticking out. So now I'm going to pull off. The ribbon lays off over everything there. So now I'm going to come in here, and it looks like I can see that I've almost pretty much placed this at the 1 inch mark. So I'm going to do the same down here. And then place my next strip and my next strip. And I look pretty good. And then one of the things I need to do here is I need to decide if I want to do straight cuts or I want to try to do a rounded cut to even off, to adhere my border maker strip. And I think I'm just going to attach it. I've kind of centered it. I've got the ends have the balls with the star piece. So I'm going to go ahead and probably just leave it like that. So I'm actually, while I kind of like my spacing here, I'm going to go ahead and use some repositionable adhesive. I'm going to attach it real quick to my, using just a light touch with the, and I'm going to do it probably just kind of halfway in the middle. And I'm going to do this with the second piece as well. And after this, I think I'm going to start gluing pieces down. I like the direction this is headed, so we'll be good to go. I am using repositionable adhesive. It just gives me a little bit more flexibility, especially when I'm not always 100% sure where things are going to go and if I need to make adjustments. So there, that's all set. So now what I'm going to do is I can tell up here that I'm centered because I'm at 1.5 inch from this side. I'm 1.5 inches in here. I'm at the 1 inch mark from the top. So that's what I'm going to use. I'm going to go ahead and stick this down at the 1 inch mark. So 1 inch down from the top. I'm 1.5 inches in from each side. Now I'm going to go ahead here and I defaulted here to giving myself a little bit more space right in here because I want to make sure that my banner detail fits in there. I think that'll work out good. So this is, it looks like right at 2 inches. So that's, I'm going to line this up at 2 inches from the top. And here I'm gonna, it looks like I'm about 3.5 inches down from the top. So I've got about 1 inch of exposure here. I've got about another 1.5 inch exposure. This is not centered. That may or may not annoy me over time. So I'm going to take a peek at this again. If I can lift up this, I think I'll be okay. Now I'm going to build it from the bottom the same, with using the same measurement. So I know from the top, I was at 1 inch. I do have some design detail in here that I can reference. I can see, you may not be able to tell in the video itself, but I can see that I am equal across here because there is some design element that helps guide that. And then I'm going to put this piece on, and I know that I did it at 2 inches from the top before, and I think we'll be good here. So I'm 2 inches from the bottom. I need to get this piece out of the way. And then this final piece. And that was at 3.5 inches from the bottom. So I'm pretty even in here. Now it is time for the crimson ribbon in the middle. I need to check my lines. My pencil lines are on this side, so that's where I'll put my adhesive. And I'm using my 6-inch mark. I'm lining it up with my ribbon so that it's nice and centered right at those points. I gotta shift to this direction a little bit. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put my title banner down. And like that. And I did the title banner very similar to how I did the ribbon cut here. I'm not 100. This is probably just over 1 inch tall, and it's not on there straight. I gave myself plenty of room to use with putting on the title. In fact, it was much wider, and I put my title on there, and then I cut it back to center rather than measuring it ahead of time. So that's definitely something to do, is take a wide piece of cardstock, build your title on there, and then trim it back to center, especially when you're working with words and trying to figure out where the center of those is can be a little bit of a challenge. So now I'm going to go ahead and start putting my photos. I am using 3.5 by 5 inch photos. This photo I cropped a little bit since it's horizontal. I cropped it a little bit more so that it would fit on the page a little bit better. But these are 3.5 by 5, and I think it's roughly 3/8 of an inch all the way around for the mat. It's not a full 1/4 inch of all the way around. It's about a 3/8. So I'm going to come in here, and I have to make the decision of whether or not I want to center. Like, do I want to center this here in the page? Do I want to default it down just a little bit lower? So I'm not pressing hard. I'm going to do a quick dry fit of how this is and double check. And now if I pull this up a little bit, can I fit this? I think I'm going to go ahead and let this hang down below. I think that's going to be just fine. I'm going to let the snowflakes come through a little bit more here on the top. And then the last item in place is this final photo, and I'm just double checking. Yep, I'm going to let it go. I feel like I'm pretty, I need to come this direction just a smidge. Pretty even. So there we go. That is sketch number 3. So here's what the sketch looks like. And here's the final, my final version of it. I'm really happy with it. I think it worked out great. I love this snowflake detail in there. I think it really just pops nicely. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you have a chance to give the sketch a try. If you do, please share on my Facebook page. You can find me on Facebook with Megan Jack's Scrapbooking. And I look forward to crafting with you soon. Thanks.